So it's February 18th. The Milwaukee Bucks are on the All-Star break. The Milwaukee Bucks are 46-8. And yet, for a lot of us, the season has been remarkably unsatisfying. Or at least maybe bittersweet is a better word. A lot of people feel this way and aren't going to share it because there's just no upside. And so what I did is I just jotted down what I would say are the top 10 reasons that this season isn't as satisfying as it absolutely should be. The Milwaukee Bucks are the consensus pick. Despite there being two star-powered LA teams, they're certainly the consensus pick to make the finals. And all of us just can't wait for the playoffs to start. So first, honorable mentions. Number 14, I don't know, these numbers, I may say number 14 3 times or something like that, I don't know. Number 14, our uniforms are terrible. And there's no emotional attachment to a team that can't get their color scheme together at all. You don't care about that. That'll be in part 3 of the video. Check that out. We're a green team that's wearing black and blue and tan and with an orange patch, and that it's terrible. Moving on. Number 13, the five serve, easy for me to say, crowd is awful, seemingly. Some people who go to games say it's not that bad. If you're an NBA junkie, though, and you watch a lot of games, if you watch Golden State, even in their down year, or you watch other markets, some are better, but it would seem quite clear to me that the crowds aren't loud. Part of it has to do with the style of play, I would say, but they're not great crowds. They might be mediocre crowds. They don't seem to stand up. They don't seem to acknowledge Giannis when he comes out of the game after big. They don't seem to acknowledge big plays. They do acknowledge DiVincenzo's jumping around all the floor, but the crowds aren't great. The Bradley Center crowds are better. Again, if somebody wants to say, hey, you don't know what you're talking about, in the building it's loud, that's fine. It doesn't seem loud when you watch the games, and of course that speaks to excitement. Also, honorable mention, ticket prices, again, which apparently a lot of people are upset about ticket prices now that the Bucks have priced them out of the market. That probably ties into the crowd, obviously, and you see this in all markets. If only corporate types go to games, that's what you get. I can't read my own handwriting. Number 10, I just wrote down Malcolm Brogdon. The thing that I will say about Brogdon is I think for a lot of people it started the season out on the bed. It started us out on the wrong foot. And a lot of fans, look, if a decision was made not to pay Malcolm Brogdon because he has bad feet and they have the medicals on that was always an understandable thing. This is a understandable calculus in sports. It would have made sense to bring everybody back to try to get a championship because allegedly that's what the owners are all about. But there's certainly an intelligent argument to be made that it wasn't smart to pay him. What became annoying is the after-the-fact smear campaign against Malcolm Brogdon made by a lot of people who are sheep and a lot of people who are bad actors and doing it on purpose. Because all of this, and I'll just jump ahead now, all roads, the problem with the toxicity of the fan base, all roads lead back to Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd was a charismatic coach when he came in. Jason Kidd was a step up from our elevating our profile nationally when we got him. Everybody remembers the Jason Kidd thing. And right around the same time, and if somebody wants to say that they were the first person on social media or Twitter to be against Jason Kidd, great, right? But the way I remembered it, we all kind of figured out he was terrible at the same time. And because certain media members at the time talked down to us and said we didn't know, there were still a lot of people who said, no, Kidd's a great coach. Everybody in the media, like Kevin Garnett, was in the bag for him. It became a us, and this is a theme, the us versus them mentality in the modern era was born for Bucks fans with that. Where for a year and a half, however long it was, everybody was saying Jason Kidd is awful. Everybody's trying to top themselves, showing videos of our scheme. Everybody's making fun of him fouling up 4 and all this kind of stuff. And at that point, Bucks Twitter and Bucks fan base in general developed a thirst for being right and a thirst to be the first one to have a take. And I certainly don't exclude myself from that. It's just my takes are right usually. So Malcolm Brogdon was, and this I'll just do my Brogdon take real quick. In the summer when it was unclear whether we were going to keep him, he's a classic Derek Fisher, Robert Horry type to us. You need that kind of guy to win a championship. Can somebody else perform that function in the playoffs? We certainly hope so. But he's the unafraid guy, the guy who doesn't think before he shoots in the last 2 minutes of a game. If he catches it, he spun it, and a lot of time it went in. So his value, and this is kind of the thing that dovetails with the Middleton conversation, other conversations, his value in high leverage situations is just greater. Just if you watch the games, because he just didn't care he was going to shoot. Even, the 2017, whichever year that was, the Celtics series where Giannis tips it in against the Celtics, whether that's Game 4 or Game 6. It's Brogdon taking it to the hoop. It's Brogdon taking the shots. Brogdon didn't care if he was open, he was going to shoot, which is more than we could say for other people. He was a Jason Terry figure in that way. So, again, it made sense to get rid of him if... And that was the other thing, too. He's a great ambassador. People who... were really into his water project and everything else. His handsome guy, just a perfect spokesman for the team, everything else. And a bunch of people decided to smear him, and this became kind of a theme. Everybody who's on the Bucks is great. Everybody who's not on the Bucks is the worst guy in the world. And people were, and then Brogdon starts out the season great, right? So Brogdon starts out the season great. A lot of people are upset about it. Then once Brogdon falls back down to earth, there's a lot of people saying, oh, I'm not hearing anything about Malcolm Brogdon now. And it's like, great. By the way, on Malcolm Brogdon, if he is one of these guys who's just not going, I mean, what did he get? 85 million or something like that? Good for, he had made, like, that's the thing too. We're dealing with Giannis. Giannis had a contract. Giannis is a beast altogether. Khris had already got his sizable contract. Malcolm Brogdon made like 2, 3, 4 million in the NBA. Like, I don't know who would begrudge Malcolm Brogdon for getting his 85 million. If he's only got a couple years left because he's got bad feet or whatever. And so people right off the bat, people who weren't happy for him, the whole situation left a bad taste. So if that's one of the reasons you're feeling a little funny about this season, I get it. Or perhaps you noticed that 150-40-90 from last year is spoken of differently than a different 50-40-90. Next up, load management. I think everybody would be happy. Like, Giannis only plays one speed, and I think a lot of times we talk about it like it's a virtue, and it kind of is. It certainly is a wonderful, honorable thing, especially in the All-Star game, to see him just competing. He did the city proud. He did the entire fan base proud, playing hard in these All-Star games, blocking LeBron James. Another thing I was right about, by the way, this great All-Star game. This anti-competitive LeBron era is probably finally winding down, but the All-Star game was great. It's super great that he only knows how to play one way. The load management thing, again, in general, like there's certainly, over the course of 82 games, and I certainly think Suki Hobson is awesome, there's one school of thought that says, well, any minute of rest you can get for these players is great. The counter to that, of course, though, is these guys aren't, it's like in the past, people would play 46 minutes in the playoffs. And that was just standard. If you had elimination games, I feel like Khris or a couple of guys played 44 minutes, at least some of those overtime games against the Raptors. It'd be like getting ready for a marathon and never ever running the 26 miles in advance. We're simply not ready. We're not ready for playoff intensity in any kind of way, and that's going to be great if we blow teams out of the water. Giannis looks gassed at the end of playoffs games. It's like not the worst fatal flaw to have, but it's one of our 12 Achilles heels that we kind of think about. And if you follow basketball as long as some of us have, it's like, yeah, it's awesome that they're playing 30 minutes a night, and you can like pretend that the per 36 numbers would translate forward. And in Giannis's case, they probably will, and Khris, they certainly wouldn't. But the load management is another kind of data point that scares us a little bit. It'd be nice if at some point he got used to playing 40 minutes. It'd be nice if he got used to... Because the thing is, Giannis has an intrinsic value just being on the court, right? So at a certain point, all the greats learn how to play and sleep. I mean, LeBron is one of the best things he does is just stand around for a while and like pick his spots. Like, you have a value because you're on the floor, especially if you're a defensive presence. But it's just different. It's just different. And if he has to go from 30 minutes playing against the Hawks and the Bulls all year to playing serious playoff minutes, which are more intense, it's worrisome. But I guess the whole league is in the same boat on that one. Which brings us to analytics. And again, analytics is far too big of a term to pigeonhole it into any one thing. And like all the analytics guys are smart, right? So all these guys doing these graphs and all this stuff, it's all interesting. I read all of it that I can. It's great. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. And for the fans who are just guys going to work like anybody else, it becomes this emotional hedge to talk about the point differential and all of these kind of things. And we're rooting for the point differential like that means anything. It doesn't mean anything. Like, it's historic, so we can understand why that would be an indicator, because if you're blowing out teams, that'd be awesome. But, at the same time, we had that first West Coast road trip and, like, no one played against us, right? Like, the Celtics guys and Kawhi took off and all this, and Lillard and Karl Anthony Towns, if he counts. We've been really fortunate with other players being hurt. And what you saw the second half into December, January, February is when then we were playing teams like the Nuggets or the Spurs, or just kind of pretty good teams. Then we weren't necessarily beating them. We were better than them, but it's a very real case can be made that the first half of the season was the fluke. Now, what's encouraging is I don't think the Clippers win or the Lakers win were a fluke. But if you look how we've played in the big game since the Lakers game, I mean, somebody can look it up. It feels like we won half of the games against the good teams. And so we fell back down to earth, which happens over the course of 82 games anyway. It just doesn't mean we're historically great. And if you watch the team, we don't look historically great. So that's what I would say about it. Another reason I think that we a lot of the fans continue to be scared is we know good and well, like we're Bucks fans. So we're like abused animals. We're like a dog that's been beaten. As far as the playoffs, we feel like we're going to get screwed in the playoffs. We know we're not going to get calls in the playoffs. And we have all these feelings of inadequacy tied to our market size. And the last little bit of that, look, the league doesn't need a reason to screw us over. A lot of us who are alive are still living with the memory of 2001. And even the Pacers series before that. And some of that is fan nonsense. I mean, it probably wasn't as bad as we thought. But David Stern he rigged the Sixers series. I don't even think that's questionable when you watch it. But so now we have this Kobe narrative, right? And it's this whole thing. And again, it becomes this pro wrestling thing of, well, who controls this narrative? Does Giannis get to take the Kobe narrative, and then maybe the refs will cheat for Giannis? Because that's the thing too. We started out the season, they were following him out at this like historic rate for great players. He was fouling out of games, and it's not how it should be for a great star. He's treated like a star. He's not treated like a superstar. And if this Kobe narrative, if LeBron, who wasn't even really close to Kobe Bryant, all things truth being told, right? Like, at the time, we all thought Kobe was doing a Machiavellian thing, like keeping them close. But Kobe was thrilled that they were like Kobe fans were graffitiing over LeBron murals and stuff. Like, the Kobe fan versus the Laker fan was a real thing. And now we get to pretend like they were best friends. I'm sure they were friends and part of this fraternity. But if LeBron takes the Kobe narrative, again, as Bucks fans, it's something to fear. If we don't get the calls, and then we have to go into a playoff series where they have Anthony Davis and LeBron James, that's scary. Now, finally, like, at some point I may do the full Khris Middleton thing. The Khris Middleton and the Khris Middleton narrative. Khris Middleton currently is simply hitting all his shots. And a lot of people don't understand. But whatever. Like, again, I'm a Bucks fan. It's great that Khris Middleton is hitting his shots. If you watch basketball as long as I do, you know who, like, you can perceive levels pretty fairly, I would say. And I think Khris Middleton now, look, this is the first year he was an actual all-star. Last year, he was 17 points a game at the all-star break and 44% from the field, and he was fat. He was benched for playing lazy. He seemed out of sorts. He seemed high, to be honest. That was last year, and everybody kind of gaslit the people who noticed this, who were smarter at this than them, frankly. And it was a whole big thing about Khris Middleton. So great, Khris Middleton's given us 2 months now, 2+ months, since he came back from injury, and the Bucks were 8-0 or 9-0 without him, where he's looked really good. But again, he's looked good because he's hit shots. He's hitting an unsustainably high amount of shots. If that keeps up, we'll win the championship. Do you really trust Khris Middleton? Because if you do, like, great. I'm really hoping we can trust him. But basically, what he's made himself, he's now basically, relative to era, made himself an all-star of the caliber of, like, Big Dog or somebody like that. And maybe he'll be 13 NBA, and if he's 13 All-NBA, great. Because whatever, he's shooting really well. If this well the whole time, then it's great. But again, the problems with Khris is that he's been out of shape. He's a little bit hard to understand. And when it came right down to it, it's not that he shot poorly in the Raptors series. It's that he took the coward's way out and refused to shoot because he didn't bear that responsibility. He just didn't. Like when the Raptors went on that, and again, I don't remember what it was, that 24-6 run or whatever, third quarter to fourth quarter, it's the star's responsibility to take those shots whether he makes them or not. When we missed 10 straight shots or whatever it was, all Khris Middleton would have had to do was go 2 for 7. But it's his job to take those shots. And what we've observed from him from 3 years is he doesn't think it's his job to do it. He doesn't think it's his job to do it. So basketball is a game of confidence, and if he feels really confident going to the playoffs, great. But Khris is not the clutch guy. He's simply not. Like, look up his clutch stats. Can he make a shot? Yeah. Can he play at a borderline all-star level? If he can play at a solid all-star level, we have a real chance. But you really shouldn't trust Khris Middleton. He's not that good. He's not that good. But he's made himself into an all-star. But again, mean regression, right? Shouldn't somebody be talking about mean regression? No? Yes? Because what makes him good is that he's hitting shots. All that other stuff. Although I saw him jump for a rebound the other day, and it blew my mind. Like, he jumped for a rebound he didn't even look like he was going to get. So, maybe progress. But it still doesn't pass the eye test. And the thing is, too, the inflationary... Look, I said I wasn't going to talk about this. I've talked about this for 5 minutes. The inflationary nature of all these numbers... It's like, oh, yeah, he had 52, but, people are scoring 60 now. And, like, we played that game, and Bradley Beal had 43 or 47 and had a bad game. Like, there are points out there to get. He's still not in the Devin Booker class of junior-level stars. But if he's really hot in the right series, it might work. But we're not going to know until the playoffs. And all these roads, all these statements lead to, we're not going to know until the playoffs. And that's a less satisfying place to be in. So enough about Khris. Let's talk about Twitter and the other social medias. And we touched on this before. But it started with Jason Kidd, as I mentioned. But it also speaks to now the performative nature of Twitter and these other places because it's a public space. So in past generations, people would just yell at the TV or yell at the game or yell at this guy or the other guy. But because these social media things are public and the Bucks post on them and Giannis posts on them, then this uber positive kind of fake positive thing is present. And people say stuff that's disingenuous. So basically what you have in Bucks Twitter now is that the performative nature of Twitter is now to the point where people are just saying super positive stuff for clicks and retweets. And even right down to like the Giannis baby. And that's kind of what Twitter has become. It's not a place to talk about the team. It's a place to dunk on people for being right while pretending like you're smart. And so some people are just bad actors. Other people are just kind of going on with it. But I mean, again, like if you were to say something negative about Giannis, I mean, then somebody else will say, well, hashtag this is why he'll leave, or this is the kind of fans you have. And so it's a public forum. It's as public as anything else right now. And so it becomes this kind of toxic thing of like Bucks fans versus Rocket fans or this and that. And people who have no idea saying, well, this is why he'll stay because this and that. And it just becomes this fraudulent kind of discourse. When we're talking about Bucks fans are scared. We're all scared. Everybody's scared that this thing isn't going to work out. Everybody's scared that Giannis is going to leave. And so people whistle past the graveyard by saying stuff like, oh, Cash Money Middleton to silence the haters, and he gets 100 retweets. And people say this, and people make dumb jokes. And it's just an emotional hedge to deal with the fact that we're not sure we're good enough. We don't look like it. We have the numbers of a historic team because George Hill especially and Khris Middleton are making every shot, and Giannis is the best player in the league. But we don't look like a historically great team aside from that. And so it's, again, like everything else, it remains to be seen. Number 4 or number whatever I wrote down, all the three-point shooting is boring for a certain percentage of the population, me included on that. It's about a boring three-point games. If you start out the game, it used to be if you started out the game down 10-2, you were furious. Now we know it doesn't matter. You can start out the game up 15-3. Next time you look, it'll be 25-20. Big leads don't matter. Being down a lot doesn't matter. I know a lot of people disagree on that, but it is what it is. Which, again, back to Dante or kind of the hustle players, or especially Giannis. I mean, so what gets the crowd going is hustle plays and diving on the floor and Giannis, blocking somebody from behind. That's what really gets the crowd going. 3-point shot after 3-point shot is boring. And so with the stakes of the playoffs, it goes back to being really interesting. I don't think it's interesting at all in the regular season, but that's just me. The Giannis free throw thing is terrifying. It's terrifying. We're going to lose a playoff game over this. I don't know what happened. His drop to 60-ish% or whatever it's at it doesn't work. If he's going to be more like a couple notches above Shaq, we got a real problem. And I haven't heard a good explanation for what it is. And obviously there was a thing earlier where he kept changing his motion, but it's not great. It's gonna lose us some games, and it flips the math quite a bit. It's all this discussion too. I understand why fans now are going to object to people who are national media outlets. I saw Whitlock do it today. A lot of people talking about, or no, it was Rick Bucher. Talking about the end of the All-Star game and Giannis. And look, I agree with him. Like, is it just the All-Star game? Yeah. But because he's the uber competitor, like all this talk about what's in his bag, and again, this goes back to people who don't really understand basketball, then they'll say, well, yeah, but his numbers are this, or historic per and all this, and it's like, no. He needs a go-to move. He needs go-to moves. To use another cliche, like the tool in your bag that you use the most is the best tool, right? He has a bag full of stuff. He just uses it sporadically, right? The fadeaway on the block to the bank shot could be his bag, but he takes it every fifth game. The jump hook to the center of the lane could be in his bag, but really he's a guy who runs to the lane and just kind of feels it out and does Euro step stuff and kicks it to the wing or does whatever he does. He's a field player. Westbrook doesn't really have a bag, if we're talking bags, because Westbrook is the short version of Giannis, just a guy who attacks. And that's great. Again, they play with the dark side of the force. It's great when it works, and then sometimes you get chucked down a shaft. But it's a thing. I'm sorry, it's just a thing. If he's going to be the best player in a series and he's going to shoot 60% from the free throw line, it is a thing. And we should be scared of it. Next up, Eric Bledsoe. Do I need to say anything else? So if you wonder why the season, if this is supposed to be about, I started talking about other stuff. If this is supposed to be about why the season is frustrating, you can't trust Eric Bledsoe, and you couldn't trust him last year. And it's frustrating how he seems to still be a little bit better in regular season, big games. He's a big game regular season player because he can get to the rack. But that deal where he jumps up, like he's a tunnel vision layup shooter, so his blind passes to the wing that get intercepted in big games because he wasted the last second and then has to like spin around and throw it. If he's hot, again, just like any other team, if Eric Bledsoe somehow does a Van Vliet in one of these series, it's going to be great. But I really wish we had somehow acquired Hill and him at the same time, and he could be like the Super Six man, or they could kind of have more of a co-equal kind of setup. But Budenholzer, I didn't even write down Budenholzer. I mean, there's still some questions. I think he's a very good coach, but there's certainly some questions associated with Ersan and just associated with how quickly he changes. But I don't think Budenholzer is necessarily the problem, but if Bledsoe doesn't have it, he doesn't have it, and we got to get him out, defense or no. And finally, the number one thing, the media, the national media, the Exodus narrative, the Giannis is going to leave. It's even if he does leave, it sapped the joy out of this season. They've stolen our joy. It's really unacceptable that the clown commissioner Adam Silver would allow things to go down this path. We should at least be able to enjoy these years. Like, that's not too much to ask. That we can. There's 29 other vulture teams that want to steal Giannis, and we should be able to enjoy the season. I don't think that's too much to ask. And so, yes, Bucks Twitter and the Bucks fan base, we've reacted poorly to some other big boy conversations because of that. And these are the kind at the point where the Bucks become the number one team. I mean, the Lakers are the number one market team, but at the point where the Bucks become the number one team, well, then we have to get in these conversations where not just the ESPN shows, but all the Fox shows and all the podcasts and Zach Lowe and Simmons and all these people have to provide content, so they're going to have to come up with a different angle every day. And we've reacted poorly to that. At the same time, the Masai Ujiri stuff and the who's got which Antetokounmpo brother on which other team, it's been draining. This is not what it was supposed to be for us. And really the league's going to be in a bad place if we can't even keep Giannis after basically doing everything right, except not signing Malcolm Brogdon and giving Chris Middleton way too much money. We've done just about everything right. And other leagues don't have to deal with this, whether through coincidence or just the structural setup. But, like, the Packers didn't have to hear for 3 years that Aaron Rodgers should really go to the Giants, that that's where he should be, or that he should go to L.A. because this, that, and the other thing. And so you point the finger at Silver, but it's a whole nother can of worms. But, ultimately this is LeBron's fault, and that's a whole other thing. But LeBron's inadequacies created all of this because he couldn't beat Dwight Howard in the playoffs and just kind of led to this whole thing. And then Durant upped it, and then everyone else upped it, and this is where we're at. And so we're scared of all these things. And so I don't know about you. I'm at 29 minutes, it looks like now. So if you made it to the end of this, great. Please subscribe, etc. There's just nothing more to be proven. All we can do is stay healthy or not. The playoffs could start tomorrow and it'd be great. There's nothing else to learn. If Chris, and I won't say anything, like if Middleton's going to regress to the mean, these other guys are, people are going to do better. Maybe Brook Lopez shoots better. So we're looking forward to the playoffs. I really think we're going to have our stare into the abyss moment where we're all of a sudden 2-2 with Jimmy Butler and Adebayo, and we're not getting all the calls, and all of a sudden they've got the momentum, and it seems like we got the game 5 back at 5. I think we'll have that, and that's what the playoffs really are. Like, we weren't used to it because of all the 8-seed stuff, but that's what the playoffs are, just the ebb and flow. But we're going to be tested in the East. I think we'll come out of the East. I think it's going to be a great playoffs. But, again, if you're wondering why for 20% of the fan base, 30%, 40%, this season hasn't been really satisfying like it should be, that's why. And I'll sum it up like this. At this point, it seems like we don't have anything to win. All we have is stuff to lose. And much like it's like the movie Major League. Like, it's literally like the team will leave if we don't win at this point. Giannis will leave if we don't win the championship. Like, what kind of stakes are that for us? The Bucks haven't won a title since 1971, and now all of a sudden we have to win this year? Not that we should be happy and enjoy the journey and enjoy going to playoff games and everything. Well, they stole that from us. And now we have to win or he's gone. And even if he's not gone, we're going to have to hear that he's gone. And I'm going to have to follow all these tweets. I'm going to have to get texts from family members and from Laker fans and all this stuff. It's simply not satisfying. So we're looking forward to the playoffs. I hope it works out. If you enjoy this is awesome. If you don't, I get it. It's a half hour worth of rambling. But, let's have a good rest of the season and go Bucks.